Traditionally in Western media, Indians are portrayed as clowns.
I like to lay on people, be heavy on them. And so I'd rather be in top position than in bottom position.
Sporting inspirations and just inspirations life is Virat Kohli. I went to England and I realized, oh my god, a midget compared to these guys. This might shock you. So I eat biryani, I'll eat chicken curry, butter chicken regularly, like pretty much every day.
The fighting tradition in India runs so deep, so old. This is a civilization that has been fighting for 1,000 years. Imagine if all those Haryana wrestlers, those Haryana Western UP wrestlers.
I think it's only a matter of time before we have an entire army of Indian fighters. I would love to inspire the next generation of wrestlers.
So you take your East Delhi steroids and you go to Russia and smash everyone. Go ahead. Dude, I'm just waiting for somebody's shin to just, snap in the middle.
We don't even necessarily send the best wrestlers to the Olympics. Imagine how many gold medals are just, sitting in a government job at the moment.
Okay, I am here with MMA fighter from India, Varun Sanyal. This is a very exciting moment for me because I'm a fan of MMA. I'm always looking to talk to people about MMA, and it's usually quite tough to find people in India to talk to MMA about. But I've managed to strike gold on this podcast, so I'm very happy to welcome onto the show Varun Sanyal. Varun, welcome.
No, thank you so much for having me. And like you said, I'm glad to have another person to discuss it with, and let's see where we go with it.
Just to set the stage for our conversation, because I'm sure that a lot of people that might be listening to us might know what MMA is, but I'm also sure that a lot of people listening to us might not know what MMA is. So for a lay audience that might not know what MMA is, how would you describe the sport?
Okay, so the more elegant way of putting it is it's a combination of different martial arts. So
Right.
you think karate, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, all of that. And you sort of take all the different disciplines, combine them into one, and that's mixed martial arts. So it's in the name. Now, if I was to put it in a less elegant sort of way, it's human cockfighting. You're literally just in a cage, and it's a fight until one of you either gets knocked out or you quit, or at the end of the rounds, the judges will have a decision. Just like in boxing.
Right.
So that's sort of the best way I can explain mixed martial arts in summary.
Why do you think, over the last, let's say, decade or so, especially, mixed martial art has become so popular?
So I think the reason it's become popular, honestly, is because it's one of the most primal sports. Literally anyone's doing it. Whether or not you're a child or even a drunk, bar fight, everyone's fighting. So, and everyone loves to watch fights.
And
So,
everyone
I mean,
thinks,
look-
and also I think, Varun, everyone thinks that if push comes to shove, they'll be pretty decent at MMA, right? I feel like pretty much everybody thinks, yeah, man, if somebody walked up to me in a bar, I'll knock them the fuck out.
Oh, you know what?
Right?
Like when I first started MMA, I had that exact mentality.
Oh, really?
Okay, so this is a story for the audience. So when I first started MMA, I was about 87 kilos,
Right.
so much bigger than I am now. And I walked into the gym. I was really cocky. I thought, yeah, what are these guys gonna do? I deadlift 200 kilos. This is
Right.
gonna be easy. So I think my coach could kind of sense the cockiness.
Mm.
So he pairs me up with this lady, and she's about 50 kilos max, okay,
Oh, wow.
or like 60 kilos max. So I'm like, yeah, it's all good. What's she gonna do? Next thing I'm flying across the air. I've been slammed on my back, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
And I later find out that her name is Tiffany Teo. She's a
Okay.
1FC fighter. And yeah, she just kicked my ass. So that was my first kind of humbling experience in MMA. And yeah, ever since then, I've never thought to pick a fight
Right.
just randomly. Or, I always know that there's a bigger fish out there at all
Right.
times.
Right. So what is your background? Like, how did you come to be interested in MMA, first of all, and even, and then become a UFC, like a MMA fighter?
So I think the interest kind of came from beating my brother up as a kid. Just like any older brother.
Right.
You start watching WWE, of course, and you try the choke slams on the bed, tombstones, whatever, right? Then Brock Lesnar, of course, from the WWE moves over to the UFC, and that like myself, I started watching it from there. CM Punk, he obviously goes in and gives
Yeah.
his hand. But yeah, so from there, I sort of started watching it. Then the Conor McGregor kind of era boomed, and I think that's where I really got into it.
Mm.
And I always kind of wanted to train, but in typical Indian dad fashion, my dad shot it down, like
Right.
immediately shot it down. But then I joined the army. So everyone in Singapore has to join the army for 2 years.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And I started making my own money. So I was like, oh, you can't stop me now.
Right.
So then I enrolled in some classes. And yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm not too bad at this.
Right.
Maybe let's see what I can do. And then, yeah, from then on, my love for mixed martial arts sort of began.
Wow. Did you ever have a base in any particular martial arts, or did you learn everything when you like went to those classes?
So when I was younger, I kind of tried taekwondo. Like
Okay.
in your condo, you do a bit of karate classes once a week.
Right.
So I tried that. I was really bored. I didn't
Right.
like it at all. And then it was only really after watching, WWE, UFC, Rocky, of course. I
Right.
can't forget that. Um, that I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll try this.
Like, how long did it take you from when did you enroll in your first like MMA class? When did you start learning, and how long did it take you from there to like your first fight? Like, what is that process like? How do you? So once you're like, let's say you're training in MMA, how do you get a fight?
Right. So I'll answer the first question.
Sure.
So I started in 2017. Like I said, around the time I joined the army. And yeah, I just started training, and I was getting better. There was no real competitions, just the jiu-jitsu competitions here and
Mm.
there. It was only really when I went to England for uni where, there's a huge scene. There's a
Yeah,
huge martial
and
arts
it's
scene in
really
England.
exploding right now in England, especially.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
my sparring partners kick my ass every day. So, it's rough. It's rough. But yeah, no. So I think once you go there, there's a lot more opportunities. So you start with these things called interclubs,
Okay.
which are sort of exhibition bouts where you gain experience. You get put in a cage, shorter rounds. It's controlled. So if let's say I hit a bit too hard, or the ref feels one person's overwhelming the other opponent,
Mm.
he'll step in and he'll kind of be like tone down the power a bit, or
Okay.
and he'll basically control it more. So you start with that, and then once your coach sort of feels like you're ready
Mm.
and to take this next step to where I am now at amateur scenes, then he'll be like, look, is this something you want to do? Because then I'll speak to a promoter
Mm.
who runs these shows, and we'll put your name through. So yeah, that's essentially where I'm at now. I'm fighting on the amateur scene, and now of course representing India on the global scene
Right.
uh, through the International MMA Federation.
That's really cool. So, what did you find? How did you find that process? That when you went into class, you said when you go learn MMA, you have certain preconceived notions about what the journey is going to be like. You have certain preconceived notions about your own prowess, right? Of what it's going to be like. Oh, I'm just going to steamroll through everybody or something like that. What is that process like? What did you find the most difficult when training MMA?
I think the most difficult part of MMA, and this kind of goes for everyone,
Right.
is just showing up every day, to be honest. Because the first few sessions, honestly, they're bad. Like it's
Yeah.
really difficult because your body's not used to those movements.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I started kicking the bag, my shins hurt like hell. Like it was really killing me.
Right.
Your knuckles feel sore, all these sorts of things. So I think the toughest part is telling yourself, okay, like this is just the kind of initial pain, but once you overcome a certain threshold, it'll be kind of smoother sailing. I don't want to say smooth sailing because it's
Sure.
never smooth sailing,
Right.
but smoother sailing.
Right.
So yeah, that I think that's kind of the mindset and the toughest part. And then obviously after that, just getting punched in the face, I suppose.
So when you started learning, were you learning like just sort of striking, stand up, or was it everything? You had to learn like grappling, wrestling, all of that.
So it's strange, right? I think different gyms around the world structure it differently. So when I first started MMA, my gym was an MMA gym, and it had jiu-jitsu, it had wrestling, it had
Okay.
Muay Thai. and then it had purely MMA, right? People tend to forget that MMA is actually now its own sport. You know, there's several things in Muay Thai, wrestling, Jiu-Jitsu that if you were to kind of bring over, it just wouldn't work in MMA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it had all of these
Yeah,
classes.
especially that like in jiu-jitsu when they like jiu-jitsu competitions, I feel like the problem with jiu-jitsu, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but I feel
No,
like
no,
one of
go.
the issues with jiu-jitsu is people are so eager to pull guard. And a
Oh my
lot of the
god.
times, fine, it'll work great in jiu-jitsu competitions. That whole butt scooting thing that you see in
Yeah, yeah.
jiu-jitsu competitions, that'll work great. But in MMA, man, somebody who knows how to wrestle, somebody who knows how to grapple, gets on top of you. That's a horrible position to be in.
I mean, simply put, anyone who knows how to punch,
Yeah, right.
you
Like you're
know,
butt scooting and suddenly they're on top of you. That's good night.
no, it is, and
Yeah.
I actually learned that the hard way. So, um, like I said, when I started in Singapore, my gym it had all of these classes, but it only had one MMA class. So that wasn't really enough for me to really get into it and understand the sort of nuances within the sport. It was only when I went to England that they had
Mm,
daily MMA classes, scheduled in their timetable. And I tried all of this pulling guard, submissions off my back. I thought I was
yeah.
Damien Maya. Uh, no, I got beat up, and
Yeah.
from then on, I decided Khabib's the way to go.
Yeah.
Stay on top and beat
And it's
people
the
up.
reason those guys dominate the bloody sport, right?
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I mean, it's not just him, right? Like even before Khabib, you see who he's inspired by. You see GSP. He was the master of staying on top
Yeah.
and just lay and pray, as they say,
Right.
um, keeping top control. And even when he was at the bottom, using sweeps to get back on top,
Yeah.
scrambling back on top, not accepting bottom position.
Yeah.
Um, unless you're really, really good and you really trust your guard game, it's bad news being
Like
on the
there's a few
bottom.
unicorns like that, like Charles Oliveira. That's one of the
Hmm.
guys that, he's like a ninja off his back. Like you
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to be in his guard. But
No.
that's few and far between. Generally speaking, you want to be in top position.
Yeah, but I mean, we even with Charles, right? We saw with Islam,
Yeah.
as someone who's
Whole
got
different ball
really,
game, man.
really good, top control. Oh my God! Like he
Yeah.
squeezed the hell out of his head, and that was
Dude,
it.
just watching that kind of makes me, it makes you sweat a little bit because you're like, man, if that guy is in a top position on you, it's not gonna feel good.
No, like even Dana White said, I've seen muscles on his back that I've never seen in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
with you, um, you went to the MMA classes, right, in England, and is that
right.
where you started to learn all the disciplines kind of regularly?
So I always did the different disciplines,
Okay.
but I never really put them together as MMA.
Okay.
So that England was where I did that,
Okay.
and I obviously had my coach Stuart Austin, who's very, very experienced. He's fought in Bellator,
Oh
he's
wow.
fought, now he's fighting in Octagon. He's fought all over the world, really, and he's the only guy to beat Tom Aspinall, so he
Oh no
always has.
way. Is he a heavyweight?
Yeah, yeah, he is a heavyweight.
Oh
He is a
man.
heavyweight. He's the only guy to beat Tom
That's
Aspinall.
wild because Tom Aspinall's a fucking gigantic heavyweight.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you should really meet Stuart because
Really?
he's huge.
Oh
So when
my
I first
god.
saw him, see, I came from Singapore where I'm considered big. I'm a lightweight and I'm considered big.
Right.
I went to England and I realized, oh my god,
Yeah.
I am a midget compared to these guys.
Yeah, especially some of the heavyweights there, man. Like, I was watching that Pavlovich and Aspinall fight, and I'm like, both of these guys, holy shit, what are these things?
Yeah, and then
Huge.
you no, and then you look at Brock Lesnar,
Yeah, yeah,
a guy's cutting from I don't know what to come to heavyweight. I'm like, imagine how big that
yeah.
guy is.
Ngannou, man, how he cut that weight, I have
Oh
no
man.
idea. Like, that guy should walk around at like 250, 270, something like that. Like, just normally.
Yeah, it doesn't look real to be honest. And
Yeah.
then you think, imagine getting hit by that.
I know. It's like getting hit by a house.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
No, so I don't know. I think like once I saw the levels, that there are in the UK, I saw the quality in coaching over
Right.
there. I think it's just the ecosystem in general and the culture that's been cultivated over the years.
Yeah.
That's when I really started seeing what MMA was, as in the different kind of nuances
Right.
and the industry as a whole.
What did you feel like was different between the UK and Singapore in terms of MMA training? And you said you started to see MMA differently. What was different?
Right. So for me, again, it's just something small like this. Like, wanting to maintain top control and not accepting bottom position,
Right.
right? I was never taught that. When I was starting out, I was always taught, even in the MMA class, that bottom is fine.
Oh, okay.
You can throw up triangles, you can throw
Yeah.
up kimuras, which is not wrong, but I think that the way, especially my coach did it, he kind of saw it um, according to percentages. What are the high percentage moves? What are the low percentage
Yeah.
moves? And he formulated a game plan according to that. I felt, and this is just my experience in Singapore. I felt that that was what was lacking. These small strategic sort of points that I was getting in the UK
Right.
or with my coach.
Like moves that give you the highest chance of success, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And scrapping out, what look, again, everything can work, right? Like a twister can
Of
work,
course.
for example. But how high percentage is it?
Yeah.
Not very. So, it's kind of focusing on what is more likely to work. For example, when you're on top and half guard, learning how to stop someone from scrambling up, how to, keep a strong base,
Right.
how to frame, how to land ground and pound, just stuff like that. What's gonna win you the fight,
Mm.
opposed to, you know, what might.
Is there anything that, on your end, once you started training MMA, that you started to realize that, okay, if I want to be a successful MMA fighter or to become a successful MMA fighter, these are the two or three disciplines that I need to maybe hyper focus on a little extra? As in, like, do you feel like you want to focus a little bit more on wrestling and striking compared to maybe jujitsu because it gives you a higher chance of success? Is there anything like
Uh,
that ever came to you?
yeah, definitely, definitely. So, I mean, wrestling, I think, all across the board. I mean, I think no
Yeah, it's
matter
such
where
a
you go
such
in
a
the
good
world.
base for like basically any combat sport.
Oh my God, yeah. Seriously, like, you know what? I'll tell you this. I went to the Muay Thai fight. I was getting my ass kicked because,
Right,
I'm not a Muay Thai fighter.
right.
So I literally grabbed the guy and I suplexed him. I'm not joking. I swear to God. That was my, like, get out of jail free
Right.
card. So literally picked him up and suplexed him.
Even the
And I
Muay
think
Thai
after
guy
that,
must be like, wait, is that allowed? Can you do
he's
that?
like, wait, that's illegal.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I tried that, and then I was just kept grabbing him, throwing those Randy Couture style
Right.
uppercuts in the clinch.
Right.
Um, so yeah, no, wrestling is definitely the most important in my opinion.
How easy or difficult, let's say, have you found wrestling? Because as you said, you didn't have a wrestling background, right? When you started MMA. How have you found the process to sort of learn wrestling? Because the reason I'm asking the question is because I started training jiu-jitsu a little while ago, and
Yep.
like I said, I told you the issue that I find with jujitsu is there's not enough of a focus on like takedowns or taking the person
Mhm.
down. There's a lot of focus on ground fighting, which is great. I enjoy that, but I feel like I've been trying to like self teach myself some wrestling, so I can make my jujitsu better. But it is it's a difficult, it's a very difficult discipline to learn if you've not been learning it from when you were like 10 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, okay, partly because I think when you're growing up, I was just always wrestling with friends.
Right.
Whether it's like chucking each other into the pool,
Right.
or we're just in the park messing around. I think it was always something we did. But I think honestly, the fact that India is really good at wrestling
Yeah.
and that we have that culture, I think for me, I when you enjoy something,
Yeah.
you just put more focus into it, and the whole process becomes fun. So for me, I think the fact that as an Indian, I was doing something that my country's good at.
Right.
um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that just made the whole process easier. And I just knew that, if I'm going to do this, and if this is something I'm going to commit to, uh, this is, this is something I'm going to have to get good
Yeah.
at, whether I like it or not.
What is the training schedule like for like a professional MMA fighter like you? Are you training every day? Do you take any days off? Like how many times do you train during the week or during the day? I mean, sorry.
Right. So daily, it sort of depends, but I will train 6 times a week. So I'll take Sundays off usually because that's when
Sure.
the gyms are closed. Quite a convenient day, to be honest. But Yeah, no, so I'll usually train from Monday to Saturday. So I'll go in the afternoon session. So that's typically just MMA focused.
Okay.
There's a MMA striking day, MMA grappling day. We'll have an MMA sparring day, cage work, which is its own discipline. So we
Yeah.
talk about jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai. I think just cage work on its own is its own martial arts discipline on its,
Yeah, because the you were talking about like Khabib and the Dagestanis, they use the cage so well. Like they use
yeah.
the cage to suffocate you so badly too.
No, exactly. So, for example, like out in the open, you could have really terrible takedowns, right? You just shoot, but if you have a good drive and you can take them to the
Yeah.
cage, yeah, it's a completely different game then because they can't use that cage to sprawl.
Right.
So a lot of stuff opens up, and you can pin them, you can land shots,
Yeah.
knees, all sorts of things. So yeah, no, we do those. We definitely focus a lot on cage work. So yeah, every day it's different. So the afternoon session is typically that, and then in the evening, whether it's Muay Thai, wrestling, grappling, I'll focus on the individual disciplines. And do that in the evening. So every day, twice a day. That's a must.
It sounds like a really, it sounds like a rough schedule. Like what's recovery like? Do you find yourself going to training when you're sore or when you feel like you're injured? And how are you able to recover if you're doing like 6 days a week?
So yeah, you have to eat well. You have to eat the right foods.
Right.
I think that's one thing that a lot of people kind of forget. They don't focus on the nutrition aspect of it. They think that calories just means, eat burgers and you fill it up. No, you have to eat
But
good
that
food. So I
Muslim
cook,
Muchi guy, right? That's all he does. Do you know that guy? The one I'm talking
yeah,
about?
pizza and pasta, yeah.
That's all he eats. It's the wildest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it makes no sense to
Guy's
me,
like an
but you know
elite
what?
athlete. Like he's one
No,
of the
he's
most
one of the
elite
best.
athletes on the planet, and he eats like pizza and pasta. That's it.
No, but you know what? I think, and this might shock you. So I eat biryani, I'll eat
Okay.
chicken curry, butter chicken regularly, like pretty much every day.
Right.
But it's just the way you make it. I think that, if you're making your own food, you know what's going into your food,
Yeah.
and you use the right ingredients, you can actually make very tasty food, that's healthy. So yeah, I think that's sort of how he does it. And
Right.
so yeah, nutrition's definitely one of it. And then one thing I've started doing more is whenever I can, I use the steam room or the sauna.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I feel like that just helps me a lot in recovery. Just getting the blood flowing.
Right.
And then lastly, of course, it's just sleep. I make sure 8 hours is a minimum.
Okay.
For me, I think sleep is almost like work.
Really.
Like, yeah, like if it means I have to leave, just hanging out with my friends early or whatever it means,
Right.
I need to get those 8 hours. I think that's super important. It's again, like I said, it's like work.
Right. The recovery process in terms of, I also meant in terms of like getting hurt. Like, do you ever carry
Ah,
like little niggling injuries into the gym or little niggling injuries into fights? Because I hear that from like UFC fighters all the time. Like if you talk to MMA fighters, they'll be like, oh yeah, in that fight, you remember that fight? My foot was injured or my elbow was, I couldn't feel my elbow and stuff like that. And I'm like, how common is that for fighters to be carrying something into like training or fights?
very. I've had injuries where like if I'm sitting down, it hurts like hell. Like it really hurts. But as soon as I start training, it's like the injury doesn't exist. You
Ah,
know?
right.
It's really weird. I think it's like, if you keep it static for too long.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But yeah, no, you're always gonna have some ache and pain. You're always gonna
Right.
be kind of sore, and I suppose that's just the nature of the sport. I mean, even going into fights, like you said, I went into my last fight. I had a bit of a wrist injury. For my last 2 weeks, I wasn't throwing my right hand,
Oh
and
wow.
my coach was just like, you know what, you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You're gonna fight in 2 weeks. What else are you gonna do?
Right.
So yeah, I know you're always carrying some injury or the other. It's more so about managing it and working around the injury. So
Right.
let's say your hands are injured, kick. You
Right.
know, like your legs are injured, punch. It again working around the injuries.
Speaking of kicking, it's wild how what an integral part of MMA sort of these leg kicks have become. Every time I see a fighter get hit with leg kicks, I'm just like, if I got one of them like flush on my leg, I'd be done. I'd be like, all right, time out. See you tomorrow. But and especially like the people like Alex Pereira. Like, have you seen Alex Pereira's leg kicks? Like there
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
video where he like hits Daniel Cormier with a leg kick, and Daniel Cormier is like, all right, that was like 20%. Wow. And
yeah.
what is I'm sure you've been hit with plenty of leg kicks. Like, what does that feel like, and what does that feel like after the fight? Because I'm sure like during the fight it hurts, but because of the adrenaline and everything, you don't notice it that much. But I'm sure you notice it after the fight.
Yeah, so it's really strange. Well, first of all, have you ever been kicked in the leg?
I have once, and I
How
didn't
did it
like it
feel?
at all. I didn't like it at all. I said, I don't want to do this ever again. Don't kick me in the leg again.
Yeah, so fortunately enough, I've not eaten many leg kicks
Okay.
because I suppose as a wrestler, people are hesitant because I usually
Right.
catch it and try to take people down. But in training, oh my God, I cannot tell you.
Right.
And the best way of saying it is when it hits the leg, your leg goes limp or it
Mm.
just sends an entire shockwave through the leg from
Right.
top to bottom to
Ugh.
the point where it even goes to your toes somehow. I don't even know how that works, but
Right. Right.
it sends shockwaves all through. And honestly, even kicking, like sometimes when you kick and you go shin on
You shin
shin,
on shin, yeah.
oh my God, I can't tell you how much that
Do
hurts.
you remember? Do you remember? I don't know if you watched it, but there was a fight between that Polish guy, legendary Polish power guy. I forgot what his
Ah,
name is.
Jan Blachowicz.
Jan Blachowicz and Ankalaev. Do you remember that fight? And Blachowicz
Yeah, yeah.
kept kicking Ankalaev shin on shin. Like, I bet he must have kicked him like 20 times.
No,
And
that was psycho.
right, and they're both big people, and big people, full power swinging shin on shin. And I'm like, dude, I'm just waiting for somebody's shin to just snap in the middle. Like, that was a very difficult fight to watch.
No, and you could see the pain. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Jan's walking like nothing's happening, and Ankalaev, like he's falling down, he's like stumbling all over the place. I'm like, dude, how is this guy walking?
Like, what
It
is
looks
what God, what's in his foot? Like, is it titanium bones like Conor McGregor or something? I don't know.
no 100 has to be something.
Right.
It's the legendary Polish power.
Polish power. That's what it is.
That's what
Another
it is.
thing, I feel like another thing that really looks like it would suck. Fighters never show it. I feel like whenever I'm watching a fight, the fighter will never react or show it. But I feel like if it happened to me, it would hurt and it would piss me off, which is the foot stomps that people do on the cage. When you have them
Yeah.
on the clinch in the cave and they fucking stomp on your foot. That really looks like it would suck.
No, it does. You know
Right.
what? Like it's to the point where in training, like let's say we're doing cage work, we're not allowed to foot stomp. Or if
Oh,
we do, we can only do it slowly because that can actually break your foot.
right.
It can actually break your toes and your foot. So yeah, they definitely hurt. They definitely suck.
Do they teach you those John Jones kicks, those John Jones leg kicks that he does, those little sideways kicks, those nasty ones?
What, the ones to the knee?
Yeah, the ones to the knee where he like does like this little side kick.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Oblique kicks, as
Yeah,
Joe
yeah, yeah,
Rogan
that's what
calls
they're
them.
called. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So we do learn them, but obviously, again, those are discouraged in training.
Okay,
If you're gonna do them, you don't do it to the knee. So you'll typically do it on the upper thigh,
sure.
just to let them know that watch yourself.
Oh,
But yeah, otherwise, that could be a career. That could
right.
literally be a career down the drain right there and then.
It's wild that
Um,
he did it like pretty much every fight, most of his career.
yeah, and he poked a lot of guys' eyes as well. So yeah,
Right.
but no, but I think if I'm not wrong, it's Rampage. Rampage says he's still not recovered
Yeah.
from the oblique kicks. Like that can do a lot of damage.
Right.
I think
But they're
even
still legal, right?
no, it's 100% legal. I
Oh
mean, look,
wow.
if the guy's gonna kick you in the head and take years away from your life, I
Right, but you
suppose
know how they discouraged like those little 12 and 9 elbows or 12 and 6 elbows are illegal? I was wondering if those kicks are now illegal somewhere.
Yeah, no, I think that's a bit tough too, because then I mean, then what about a heel hook and what about knee bars?
That makes
So
sense.
where do you draw the line?
Right. And so let me ask you this then. We kind of touched on it earlier, but for people that might watch this and they're like, the MMA sounds interesting to maybe learn, train, watch. Let's look at the learn part first. Like if somebody were to learn MMA, what would you say is the best base for people to get into MMA? What's the first thing they should be learning?
Yeah, so like I said, I think wrestling is definitely the one. And the reason I keep harping on about wrestling is because there's application everywhere, right? You can be a good wrestler and and you've never done any sort of judo or never done any sort of jiu-jitsu and still come away as the winner, right? For example, my initial jiu-jitsu tournaments was literally just me taking the guy down and pinning him there for the whole round, and I would just went 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. So yeah, you can just use it like that. And then plus I said, the cage, that's a whole different element. You can use it to duck under punches. So I think that's the most important one. And then after that, I'd say boxing, simply because that's what's going to knock people out. And you can use hands to defend yourself, as well as you can set up takedowns with the hands.
Right.
So I would say these two are probably the most important, in MMA if you want to get started.
Have you ever fought or sparred with somebody that had a very like extensive judo background?
Yeah. So in fact, my coach is Team GB Judo. Like he
Oh,
used to
wow.
represent GB in judo. Did the I think junior world championships.
Oh, wow.
His brother's an Olympian. So yeah, his judo background is quite extensive. But even he'll only teach us the sort of basics, because a standard hip throw, it oftentimes means you're giving up your back.
Yeah.
So you don't want to risk that. And there's certain things which are you need a gi in order to execute.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think he'll teach us what's important.
Is
The
that
rest
the
of it,
reason why
we
you feel like,
decide.
we don't see that many like um champions or successful MMA fighters in different promotions that have a judo background? Because I think one of the most famous ones obviously is Fedor. He had a judo
Yep.
sambo background, but he was
I was
sambo
just gonna say.
also. But a lot of his takedowns that you look at, if you look at his takedowns, if you look at his career, a lot of his takedowns are like judo based, right? Like
Correct.
inside trips, outside trips, and things like that.
Mhm.
And another one obviously is Ronda Rousey.
Yep.
Like she's very famous for her judo throws and things like that, setting up the armbar. But other than that, I struggle to think of too many people that have an extensive judo background and have been very successful as MMA fighters. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I think like no one. Again, I think maybe it's the gi, but I do also think that people do use judo. It's just not. It's just not very overt. So they'll use the off balancing,
Yeah.
the trip, even just subtly putting your foot out to trip them. I think those are judo principles which people often overlook. For example, look at Islam Makhachev. He actually uses a lot of judo in his
A lot of
takedowns, and then
trips. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of trip, and even Khabib. But I think people forget that these are actually a lot of judo principles being incorporated.
Right.
People look at it and think, oh, wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. But no, there is a lot of judo, sambo,
Because
and
is
all of
that what
these.
sambo is? Is sambo kind of like a mix between sort of judo and wrestling and a little bit of obviously striking? Is that what sambo is?
From my understanding, it's guys with a gi top. For some reason, they don't wear pants, and it's just MMA like that. And
That's
I
how you
think
know
there's
that
just
guy's hardcore. If you see some dude with a gi and shorts, run away.
he doesn't care. He doesn't care.
That guy's
You know,
hardcore, man. He don't give a fuck. Yeah.
he's coming for you. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think it's basically just MMA with a gi on, and I think on the ground, the scoring's just a bit different. That I don't really understand, if I'm being honest.
Sure. It is. It's because it's fun. I like watching judo. I've always enjoyed watching judo. Ever since I started learning jujitsu as well, I've been trying to look at like disciplines like judo, disciplines like wrestling. Because it makes your overall jujitsu better. Like you said, you went to
Yep.
BJJ tournaments with like a wrestling background, and you would just take people down and pin them and keep them there. And ideally, that's what I would like to do because I'm on the larger side. I'm not the most sort of let's say agile person, right, on the map. I'm not very agile, so I like the way I do BJJ is I like to use my weight. I like to like lay on people, be heavy on them, and so I'd rather be in like top position than in bottom position because I feel like I don't have that kind of agility right now to be able to just like throw up like insane arm bars or triangles and stuff like that. So I like being in top position. So whatever can get me there, I want to learn that, whether it's judo, whether it's wrestling. Did you ever train any judo?
Not formally.
Okay,
Again, it's pretty much just through my coach, the off balancing, the
sure.
trips. Oh, also, sorry, another thing I forgot to mention. Another reason kind of judo gets neutralized in MMA, and this is something that my coach harps on about, is in judo, if I'm not wrong, there's certain ways in which you can neutralize judo completely, which is by blocking the hip with your hand, if I'm not wrong. You just frame on the hip, and that kills
Oh,
the majority of judo moves. But obviously in MMA, no one's gonna be like, "Hey, don't put your hand there and block the
right.
hips."
Isn't it true that in some tournaments, like in some judo tournaments, like you're not allowed to attack below the belt? Like you're not allowed to throw or attack below the belt? I heard about that somewhere. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm not wrong, I believe it used to be allowed. Now it's not allowed anymore. You can't shoot double legs and
Right.
single leg, whatever. I don't know why that is,
Which I feel
because
is wild, right? Because I feel like any martial art, you want to be able to use the whole body to attack.
exactly, and I think that it makes it a less complete sport overall, because you're really neglecting. I mean, as John Danaher says, 50% of the body.
Right.
So I don't see why they wouldn't do it. But also I do see, like, from the Olympic standpoint, right? You've already got wrestling, so you don't want your kind of viewers to confuse the two. Because I suppose if you've got wrestling in judo, why would you need wrestling?
Right. So, let's talk about, mixed martial arts in India, because you're an
Yep.
Indian mixed martial artist. You're representing India in international tournaments. You're a crop of a few people that are starting to gain prominence. Like Anshul Jubli, you mentioned yourself. He had his first fight in the UFC not that long ago, and there are other fighters also. I think there's some domestic promotions in India also, very small, but some domestic
Yep.
promotions in India as well. And what kind of potential do you see in India? Because I feel like, just in terms of, like, the way you talked about the basics, what are the basics that a fighter should learn if they want to be successful at MMA? You said learn how to wrestle, learn how to strike, right? And if you
Yep.
look at India, India produces some really world class wrestlers.
Yeah.
India
Oh my
produces some
God.
really world class boxers.
Really,
The
really
raw
good.
ingredients are there.
I genuinely think that it's only a matter of time before we have, several. I mean, now we just have Anshul Jubli, soon me. Um, I think it's only a matter of time before we have an entire army of Indian fighters.
Really?
Simply for the reasons that you stated, and now jiu-jitsu is being introduced, so people are understanding how to submit people, how to escape submissions, how to scramble from bottom position. And like I said, MMA is its own martial art, and I have to keep harping on about that, because that's all often overlooked. And even that now is kind of being brought into India. The knowledge, using the cage, not giving up top position, never accepting bottom position. Like, these things, it'll take time, but the strategy side of it, and bringing all the arts together, it's slowly coming, and you can see it. For example, I went for the national championships last year.
Mm,
There's about 400, 500 athletes there,
wow.
you know and you could see that the way people were coaching, you could see that there were some people who were still sort of trying to understand the sport.
Right.
They were giving strategical kind of pointers that were sort of outdated. And then you could see that there were coaches who were more up to date,
Mm,
and they were doing things that I've seen coaches kind of demonstrate, whether it's in Singapore, in India, and in England.
right.
So yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before it explodes.
Are there athletes in India that are considering taking up mixed martial arts, or that are training in mixed martial arts already? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
Oh,
a
wow.
huge pool. There's definitely a huge pool, and we have had. So I'm not the only one competing at the IMAFs, for example,
Okay.
which is the International MMA Federation. They host the World Championships, Asians, Europeans. So there are other Indian athletes. So we have, we have won a few fights there as well, not just me.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before we regularly start bringing in medals,
Wow.
because um, for example, I was in the quarterfinals. We saw another guy. There's this guy called Santosh. He's fighting out of Mumbai.
Mm.
He had literally never done a day of striking in his life. Rocks up to this tournament. I'm not kidding. He had the best wrestling in that entire, like, across all weight classes,
Dude,
genders,
Indian
whatever you.
wrestlers, man, we produce some animals, man.
He was good. Like,
Yeah.
he was seriously good. It was to the point where I remember after the fight. Like, so I mean, first of all, I was with my friend because he was in Team England, and I was watching the fight with him. He's like, "Mate, Indians wrestle. Oh, I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, we've got a huge history of this." I'm
Right.
like, "Dude, you have no idea how good these
How
guys are."
old the wrestling tradition in India even runs, right?
Exactly. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, these guys are seriously good. And man, he was doing all these kinds of moves, which, you know, the people at the, he was going against Ukrainians, Polish, and these
Wow.
are countries that are known for their grappling and their
Right.
wrestling internationally. And he was ragdolling them. And I was like, oh my God, just imagine this guy learned how to throw a punch. Like,
Right.
I think he would win the entire thing. If you
Wow.
ask me, I think he genuinely would win the entire thing. So, yeah, it's very exciting time, and I better.
Yeah, and think about it. Like, imagine if all those Haryana wrestlers, those Haryana, Western
I
UP
know.
wrestlers, if somebody told them that, listen, there is a way for you to make a shitload more money, and there's if you can learn how to throw punches, if you can learn a little bit more grappling, you can go to promotions and beat the shit out of people
No, you
and
really
make
can.
good
And
money while you're doing it.
exactly, but I mean, better than what you'd make wrestling. I mean, how much are you
Exactly,
making
and
wrestling?
wrestling in India, especially, right?
Oh, 100%. So I think, yeah, that's one thing I personally would love to do. So I mean, obviously I'm fighting right now. I would love to inspire the next generation of wrestlers, have them look at, someone like me, Anshul,
Right.
even Santosh, who was wrestling on the
And
global stage.
isn't there I forgot, she's one of the Pogat sisters that fights in
Yeah,
one
yeah.
championship. Like, she's
Ritu
got a
Fogart.
wrestling background and she's good. She's very good.
Yeah, yeah, she's not bad. She's not bad herself. So, again, my hope is that the next generation looks at people like us, competing internationally. We're winning on a global stage now. We've got to a certain level. And I don't even think, we've started yet. For example, I'm just at the start. Anshul is just at the start. I hope that they can, take the torch and
Right.
kind of even go further than we do.
So I asked you this offline, but let me ask you this again because I was,
Yeah.
I was going through your Twitter profile because I'm a stalker, and I saw that you had there's something that you reposted which was about a MMA symposium happening in
Yep,
India, I
yep,
think
yep,
in
yep,
February. And
yep.
I told you this earlier. I'm going to tell you this again. I had no idea that I think it's a Indian government sponsored symposium, and I didn't even know they were aware that there's this thing called MMA, let alone be holding a symposium. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first of all, this is going to be the first MMA summit that's ever been hosted in India.
Wow,
So it's actually
that's
organized by a
awesome,
friend.
man. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
I know. It's
Yeah,
awesome. So we're bringing in speakers, whether it's fighters like myself, Anshul Jubli will be there actually, people who have their own gyms, people who've been involved in the officiating side, organization of events. So, all sorts of people from different aspects of MMA coming together, discussing their experiences, how to get into the sport, how to grow the sport in India. Because I think it's important that, everyone pools in together, pools their knowledge, and, you know, grows the sport and takes it to heights it's never seen before.
right. So I saw that there were some people there that there were coaches, like wrestling coaches and things like that. Uh, are there like MMA coaches in India? Like, are some of them MMA coaches as well, or are they just coaching in like very specific disciplines, like either striking or wrestling?
So I forget, I'll have to look at
Okay.
no, so there's Siddharth Singh, for example. Siddharth Singh and Ashwin Hoon.
Okay.
They're definitely MMA coaches. For example, Siddharth
Oh.
Singh is Anshul Jubli's coach, right?
Oh, nice.
He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu if I'm not wrong. He has like 15 years of Muay Thai experience, and of course he's taken a kid from Uttarakhand and he's taken him to the UFC, so
Yeah.
he obviously knows what he's doing. And then Ashwin Hoon, so he's in Warriors Cove in Delhi. He's actually who I train under whenever I'm out there.
Okay.
He's very good. Like, he's a good brown belt. He's got good knowledge. There's also, I don't know if he's on the panelist list, but his name's Mohit Chola.
Okay.
So he's also very good. He's a purple belt. He's got some striking experience himself. runs the combat lab out in Delhi.
Oh wow.
So yeah, there are definitely guys out there who, well, on this panel as well as in India in general, who have MMA experience now and are now starting to just bring back that knowledge from overseas.
That's so cool because how did the government even like hear about this? Like how did this symposium come about? Do you have any idea?
No, so I do. So the guy who's organizing it, Gaurav Golaya, he's actually a friend of mine, and he's been in
Nice.
the MMA scene for I think the last sort of 15 years.
Okay.
So he tells me stories about when he first started, it was literally just a gym, and people from all over just coming to fight. Like it was just a free for all kind of underground fight club essentially.
Right.
So he was there in those early days, and then he started training. He's always loved MMA,
Nice.
and yeah, he thought why not? And then me and him started getting talking. We're like, you know what? Let's bring a summit together. We need government recognition. We need eyeballs on the sport. So what better way to do it? So yeah, here we are. We're well. Let's see where this takes us.
So, for people that might be interested in following this summit, where can they find it? Is there any way that they can like attend it? Like, what's the scene there? Like, is it going to be televised or what's it going to be like?
Right. So Gaurav's gonna kill me because he's like, this was your moment to publicize it.
Oh, but
But I
still,
will
Varun,
say,
man, you
I
gotta be
know,
ready
I
for these
know.
things.
No, but I will say no. It's on the 27th of Feb. It's in
Okay.
Delhi. I think more details are still being finalized as I know, because we're trying to bring on sponsors. As he's reached out to over 100 companies now,
Wow,
and only like two or three are like, okay, what is MMA? Are
that's
only one or
wild,
two
man.
are
It's a
even
gold
showing
mine. Get in
interest?
while you can. Yeah.
Yeah, really get in while you can, because this is the fastest growing sport in the world, and India is on the verge of taking over. So I
Wow.
do think that this
That's
is the
so cool to hear. Honestly, I really want people to be seeing Haryana the way they see Dagestan. Like all these killers come, these insane wrestlers, just like murdering everybody. I'd love that.
Oh, I would love it too. Oh
Yeah,
my God, I couldn't tell you. It's like sometimes, like for example, at Warriors Cove in Delhi, there are actually a few guys now that have come from a wrestling background and they've started that training in MMA. There's this guy called Chungran, for example. If I'm not wrong, he was an SAI, so Sports Authority of India. He was an SAI sponsored wrestler, and now he started doing jiu-jitsu. He's now started doing
yeah.
some striking, and I'm like, oh my God.
Doing
I
jujitsu with wrestlers is just a different feeling than doing jujitsu with anybody else. The way wrestlers use their weight is insane. Just people that are just training jujitsu just don't use their weight the way wrestlers do. It's wild how good they are.
No, it's just base. Like
Yeah.
it's just the base, the grip strength,
Yeah.
the positional awareness. I feel like those things are so integral to wrestling that when you kind of move over to jiu-jitsu, oh my God, you're a nuisance.
Yeah, they really are. We have a wrestler in our class, and he's like small, very small and very compact. It's like trying to wrestle like a ball, always like wriggling out.
Oh
If I
no.
can stay there.
No, no, I remember we had this one guy, like he was about 95 kilos. He
Right.
was like the short dude, and he's like a ball. And honestly, like he couldn't have been more than 5'6", but taking him down
Yeah.
was an absolute nightmare because my God, like there's nothing to hold on, and
And
even if you want to
and
get
B,
your
their
arms
center
around,
of gravity is so bloody low already, right?
seriously,
Yeah.
that's why I'm like Volkanovski must be such a nightmare to fight because
Yeah.
like Islam took him down, and I'm like I realized why it was so hard, you know.
Yeah, because he's like small, he's like thick. He used to play rugby professionally. And if you're a rugby player, you're strong as an ox to bloody begin with. Then you start
Exactly.
wrestling, you get even stronger. So I mean, the strength of that guy, I can't even imagine how strong Volkanovski is.
Plus, he has no neck. The guy just has no neck. He's got a
His head
thumb
and
for
then
a head.
shoulders right away. Yeah.
Exactly, no neck. So it's funny. So I have a mutual friend with Brian Ortega,
Mm,
and apparently after the fight, he tried to get the guillotine. He
yeah.
tried to get the triangle, and Brian's only words were, "Man, the guy has no neck."
It's like I was squeezing his dome.
Yeah,
Or
like,
neck.
oh my god.
Yeah, it's
You know,
pretty.
it's super tough. It is super. So I'm very excited for so a guy like Chung Ren. When I see him training in the gym, I'm like, oh my god,
Right.
like this is where we can go. And honestly, it's sad because he's, I think, 3-0, 4-0, and I genuinely think that if he went overseas, he would be able to beat, talent from all over the world.
Wow.
Um, the only problem is that shows, you know, they've not really looked at India and
Mm.
Indian fighters. So that's for starters. Secondly, our visa issues.
Oh.
So, getting flown out to different countries and fighting there. Yeah, it's not easy. So, for example, we've got a couple of fighters who automatically come to my mind: Rahul Thapa and Chungren Koren. Right, these two guys I genuinely think would beat people from around the world, but they have visa issues. People aren't willing to fly them out, and as a result, they can't display their talent
Yeah.
on the world stage. I'm fortunate enough that I can. Anshul is now fortunate enough that he can, but what
Right.
about these guys? So that's also one of the challenges that we're gonna have to overcome
Right.
moving forward.
Yeah, because it's difficult, right? Like even if you apply for, I don't know what kind of a visa you would apply for if you were on UFC, if you were like a fighter, and
Hmm.
if you wanted to go to train in the US at some training school, you're like, oh, these people want me over there. They're willing to train me, and then you have to apply for a visa. I don't know what visa you'd apply for because processing times are so long, right? You apply
Exactly.
for a visa, it takes you like 2 years to bloody even get the visa, and then for 2 years you're just stuck.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, even okay, unless you're like a Khabib or a Shafkat, the UFC is not gonna
Right.
sponsor you to fly you out there. Your best bet really is, if you're an Indian, is to fight on maybe an Abu Dhabi card, on one of the Asian cards,
Okay.
because it's very tough. I mean, even in if you want to fight in England, what good luck getting a visa to go
Yeah.
fight there, and then having the UFC fly you out there. It's not easy. It's definitely
Or
not easy.
even train for that matter, right? Like you
Yeah,
you know you
yeah.
were fortunate enough to be able to go and train in England, but I wonder like how many Indian fighters would be able to just be like, okay, I'm just going to pick up my bags and go to England next week, right? Because you'll have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
apply for that visa. Bloody goodness knows how long you're going to get, how long it's going to take before you get that visa. They're going to be like,
No, and
hey, you want to come here and fight? What do you mean?
I got lucky. It's because I graduated from England, so I have a 2-year visa afterwards, which lets me stay there.
Right.
Otherwise, they were gonna, how else am I gonna train there? How else am I gonna stay on and live there full time? So, no, it's definitely not an easy process for Indian fighters, and I
Right.
hope that changes. I think that'll change again as more people start watching it in India, and once that happens, it has a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
As more people watch fighting in India, international organizations, whether it's your PFL, Bellator, UFC, they start taking interest, and
Right.
they start, scouting out for more talent. So, and then, as you see more Indian fighters on UFC cards, more people watch, and then, yeah, so it
Right.
becomes like a feedback
I
loop.
wonder if one could be a good avenue for these people because it's an Asia-based organization. So I wonder if like visa issues would be less of an issue there.
Um, Again, I don't want to kind of rip into one FC or do anything like that. So everything I'm saying here is simply
Rip away, man. It's not like I'm sponsored by them.
yeah, but you know what? Maybe he'll fight for them one day and then just bite me in the ass.
They'll
So
they'll dig up this clip and you'll trend on Twitter for a couple of days, man. All
yeah, no, no.
publicity is good publicity.
Fair enough. It's like, your
Yeah.
first fight is against Shinya Aoki.
Exactly.
Oh god. No, but from what I know with one is, I think people are just and again, this is just locker room talk. People are a bit hesitant to fight at one because of their testing policies.
Okay.
So obviously the UFC has had
Had,
USADA,
yeah.
so I think that's why people are more willing to do it. I mean, it's not like Indian MMA is clean. You go to any corner shop in Delhi, you can find a guy who will sell you steroids. But
Right.
I think it's just that. I mean that, but when you're putting your life on the line against top level talent, and then they're not testing,
Right.
is it really worth it? Plus, one FC at the very low level, um, isn't really paying the kind of money that would kind of encourage you to take that risk.
Right. Or you
You
would
know,
find to be sustainable.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I do think ONE FC is definitely an avenue, but from what I know, these are sort of the reasons why people haven't yet jumped in
Right.
or aren't really putting their hands up and being like, pick me.
I wonder what the visa situation is between India and Russia. Because yeah, I wonder if like some of these fighters could go to Russia and train.
I suppose the story would be the same. I mean, if you think ONE FC, a globally recognized organization,
Right.
has dodgy testing policies, could you just imagine?
The reason I was saying that is because I'm like, I bet they don't test at all in Russia. So you take your East Delhi steroids and you go to Russia and smash everyone. Go ahead.
Hey, you know what? Actually, that's not bad. No, I mean, hey. First of all, okay, Islam was given vitamin pills, not
Of course.
steroids. Okay,
Of course.
vitamin pills. He was
Yeah.
12 years old. It's part of the meals.
Yeah.
That's what he was given.
That's why he's got muscles on his back that Dana White's never seen.
Yeah, of
Exactly.
course, of
Yeah.
course. Come on.
Yeah.
Did you not know? If
It's
you
because
just
of
ate
all those
5 apples.
multivitamin he takes.
No, no, but that's one of the biggest problems. Honestly, even in India, it is an issue. But I will say that in India, for whatever reason, and to their credit, MFN does pay their fighters well, and enough that you're willing to take it as a full time job. So if I'm not wrong, MFN, which is Matrix Fight Night for
Mm.
those who don't know, it's run by the Shroffs. I think they pay about 3 to 4 lakhs
Oh wow.
for fight, and this is like for entry level fighters,
Yeah, that's pretty
which is,
cool.
I mean, that's pretty good money for a
Right.
first fight. That's like what, 4,000 pounds.
Yeah.
You're not even getting paid that at Cage Warriors, if I'm not wrong. I don't even think
Wow.
Cage Warriors will pay you 4,000 pounds. So, to get paid that in India, it's very good. But
Right.
then again, you have to face these, because it's the monopoly. You have to face the kind of issues that comes with dealing with the monopoly, which
Yeah.
means that those who are in charge,
Do what they
they can kind of,
do what they want.
yeah, they can screw you. They can pick your fights and give you whoever they want. You
Right.
know, uh, you kind of act a bit out of line
Right.
again. So these are sort of the dangers. But again, I do have to credit them. They do take very good care of their fighters.
Yeah, that's very cool. So just coming back to this symposium really quickly, the summit. What is the topic of discussion in the summit? Like, what are you guys hoping to get out of the summit?
There's actually different segments in the
Sure.
summit. So the first segment will sort of touch upon the history of martial arts and the history of martial arts in India specifically, right? To revive our martial arts culture. Then we'll sort of go on to explain what martial arts is, the current landscape of MMA, and then there comes, the different experts, whether it's Anshul and myself in the MMA side discussing MMA as a fighter.
Mm,
Then there comes the officials. Then comes the event organizers and discussing the potential of expanding MMA. Then, if I'm not wrong, there'll be people who will discuss the broadcast side of things.
mm.
So just to sort of explain what the sport is, why it's important, in terms of reviving India's martial arts culture, and what we can do with it.
That's very cool.
So
I'm glad the government is taking some interest in it. I had no idea they knew about it, and the fact that a summit is being organized and the government is involved in some way. I think um, that's very encouraging to me personally as a fan of MMA, and hopefully this leads to more and more exposure for MMA, more and more people taking up an MMA, and a lot of and also especially like the world class wrestlers and strikers that we have in India can be making so much more money. They can be doing this
yeah.
as a full-time job. They can become international stars. They can make a great life for themselves and their families. you know that avenue also gets provided to a lot of Indians. I think that'll be another really cool aspect of it.
So actually, like, it's really interesting you say that, and one thing that I do want to mention. So I was talking about Santosh earlier, right? The wrestler who went off and
Right.
ragdolling everyone. So Santosh was actually, he grew up as a wrestler, and I think he was under Narsingh Yadav, who's
Oh
of
wow.
course an Olympian in his own right. So I think he missed the qualification for the Indian team by a few points,
Oh wow.
right? Or like he just about missed the cut. Now what does he do? What does a guy like him do? He's obviously very very good, right? But he's just not good enough to be in the Indian team. So what does he
Right.
do? I mean, we imagine how many of these guys are just hanging around doing nothing.
Right. They're doing government jobs or they're doing some other kind of jobs where you look at somebody like look at how many like D1 wrestlers there are in the
Exactly,
UFC,
in the
right?
US.
Who never made it
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
Olympics team, but they're at the UFC smashing people.
And here we are. Yeah, so a similar thing. So I mean, look, either they're going to be your government jobs, they're bouncers at clubs, they're coaches, they're hitmen, you know. Um so yeah, that's what they're doing, and I'm like, man,
Damn, you just
we
exposed Santosh's real job.
sorry, Santosh. But yeah, no, seriously, I'm like, come on, imagine we just brought all these guys together, taught
Right.
them, how to punch, how to kick. Oh my God, the 1 billion people, one
Right.
billion people. Imagine how many.
And 1 billion people with like a very very well developed wrestling tradition, like Indian
Yeah,
wrestling is not a joke. Indian wrestling goes
it
out there and
really isn't.
dominates in competitions.
I'm convinced. I'm really convinced, and I could be wrong, and Twitter might blast me for this, but I'm convinced that we don't even necessarily send the best wrestlers to the Olympics.
Really.
Yeah, my okay. This is my theory. My theory is our best wrestlers. You know how they get the government jobs, yeah.
Right.
So like if you're a certain standard, they'll give you a government job. They take care of you. I've actually heard this from people I've trained with as well. They're happy to go on and take that government job and make the money from there, and
Right.
just ride off into the sunset rather than pursuing wrestling full time. So I'm just thinking, my God, right? Imagine
Because the financial incentives aren't really there, right? Like, okay, fine, you're going to pursue wrestling. Okay, kya ukhad loge wrestling karke, right? That's
exactly,
the kind of mentality in India. Well, you have a government job, you have a steady income, you can take care of yourself, you can take care of your family. But
right?
what will you do with wrestling, right?
Exactly. So that's sort of just your foot. You just use wrestling as the foot in the door, and then after that, you take care of the family.
Right.
Whereas, yeah, so that's why I'm like, oh my God, if that's the case, then I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the
Sure, of
guys who are
course.
winning our medals. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, oh my God, imagine how many gold medals are just
Right.
sitting in a government job at the moment.
Right. Exactly. And I'm sure a lot of these people aren't even aware that there's a pipeline. There's a
Yeah,
pipeline from wrestling to potentially, this other sport where there's it's growing really fast. There's a lot of global promotions that pay decent money, and there's a very good living to be potentially made.
yeah, no. So Santosh, for example, had no idea MMA even existed, right?
Right.
And it was hilarious. So after his fight, right? So he lost one of them because he just got outstruck.
Right.
And my coach goes to him. It was really funny because Santosh only speaks Hindi, and my coach is British, right? So like that conversation was hilarious. But basically, he was telling him like, "Do you watch? Oh shit! Do you watch Daniel Cormier? Do you watch these guys?"
Uh,
Santosh had absolutely no idea who
no
any of
idea.
these guys were. Who the hell is Daniel Cormier?
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, man. If only you knew, or if only you could incorporate even like 10% of what Daniel Cormier does,
Right.
you'd be incredible.
Right, exactly. Because if you look at like Daniel Cormier or even Khabib, like I don't think you would say that they are some of the most elite strikers in mixed
No,
martial arts. They use
no.
their striking to set up wrestling, right? They
Oh,
use their
100%.
striking to set up takedowns. Or what DC did really well was that dirty boxing in the clinch.
Exactly.
Like he's probably one
Exactly.
of the best in the world at that kind of dirty boxing. But
Yeah, yeah.
generally speaking, like even GSP, he was a great striker, but GSP would use like these feints to set up these
Hmm.
takedowns. And that's what Khabib does. That's what DC does. And they've been so successful with it. So it's not even like you have to be absolute world class. You don't have to be an Alex Pereira to be
No,
successful, right? If you can
no.
just figure out how to like make people flinch or shift their weight here and there because of your striking, to set up those openings.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched upon that because one weapon that people often kind of overlook in MMA is the threat of wrestling.
Right,
That is like, I would say, is as good as having a seriously powerful right hand, or in the case of Alex Pereira, like a powerful left hook, right?
right.
Because the most famous example is Khabib with Conor. That overhand, I mean, he dropped Conor. Who would have thought that Conor versus Khabib would be Conor on his ass from a Khabib overhand, right? No one
Right,
would have thought that. But it's because, yeah, Khabib feints the level change. Connor drops his hand and boom, over the top, he's dropped,
right.
right? And yeah, those are the sort of tips and tricks you need to have. So even Khabib, like, I mean, when he first started, if you look at his earlier fights, obviously as time went on, he got a lot better. But if you watch his earlier fights, his striking was all over the place. He was like swinging his
Right.
arms, doing kind of shitty overhands, weird kind of running knees, all sorts of weird stuff.
So you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of Ben Askren and how bloody successful that guy was with the striking he has. Like his striking and his success
It
don't
was
match up.
appalling. His striking's appalling. Do you remember that spinning back fist against
I know. It's like this
David
guy,
Maya?
it looks like a meme, but this guy is one of the most successful MMA fighters. Like it's wild.
I think he was undefeated until that knee, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong, until that knee, he never lost. I'm like,
Never
oh
lost
my
a fight.
god, like this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, he gets exposed.
But it just goes to show you the advantage that you have if you have a wrestling background. It's insane the advantage that you get.
Yeah, because the threat
Yeah.
alone is so scary. Because I cannot tell you, like, okay, Chael Sonnen always talks about this, and by the way, for anyone listening, I've tweeted about this as well. I really think Chael Sonnen is someone everyone, whether you're getting into the sport or you're someone who watches it regularly, you have to watch him because he's dropping nuggets of information, whether it's on the industry and technique. But Chael Sonnen always talks about the biggest fear for a fighter is exhaustion,
Mm.
right? And I agree. And there's nothing more exhausted than being taken down, being held against your will, and punched in the face and trying to get back up. Every time you get back up, you're getting taken down. And then you try to get back up, you're getting taken down. There's nothing more tiring than that.
And dude, I'm sure you've been in this position. Like, I haven't trained that that much. Like, I can't pretend to know that much. That's why I consider myself an expert. But what- I've been in this position like a couple of times, and I'm sure you have during like sparring and stuff. That if you have somebody that's like really heavy on you, that's on in top
Yeah.
position, and they're very heavy on you, they're doing either like a smash pass or they're just laying on you, very heavy, smothering you. It's very unpleasant. Like people tap to that. That's very unpleasant.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
just
no.
somebody just laying on you, not even like trying to pass guard or get to a different position, but just holding you down with their entire weight, just laying on you. Like that's
No,
very tiring.
and it is, and it's painful. When I first started jiu-jitsu, um, someone put shoulder pressure on my jaw.
Oh man.
And you don't know when you're inexperienced. You're like, oh crap, is my jaw about to break? And I tapped, and then my coach looked at me and he was like, "What are you doing?" Like, you tapped at that, and
Right.
only with experience do you realize that, okay, jaw's not going to break, but it really hurts. It
Yeah.
can really hurt, and if it's against someone heavier, so my God, good luck to you, because
Yeah.
yeah, it is the most exhausting thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so just coming back to that point, I really do hope that this symposium exposes more people to MMA. Your continued success, Anshul's continued success, inspires more people to watch the sport. Um, is there, for people that might be interested, Varun? Where can people in India watch MMA? Like if they were to watch MMA, okay, there's obviously the UFC. That's I think that's available on like set 10 sports or something like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, if they were to see ki, "Acha, I want to watch some Indian fighters," where can they do that?
So if I'm not wrong, on Disney Hotstar,
Okay.
you can watch Matrix Fight Night.
Okay.
And generally, I mean, YouTube is there. YouTube is always there. You can just search up Indian MMA and
Okay.
you'll find a bunch. If you search up Matrix Fight Night on YouTube, you'll get a bunch of fights.
Okay.
But I think if you want to watch it kind of officially, I would say go to Disney Hotstar because they're the official streaming platform at the moment. And
Okay.
honestly, you don't have to just watch you don't just have to watch UFC. Like you said ONE FC earlier. There's PFL,
Yeah.
and now of course PFL is Bellator's combined. You can watch, I mean, just regional shows within India because
Right.
for example, in Pune, I think it's Pune, Warriors Dream Series. There's
Oh.
always local shows running around. Just go watch those, see
Hmm.
what it's all about.
Right.
Uh, I would highly recommend people do that.
Nice. That's very cool. And I know I've taken your time a little bit. I just want to keep you around for
Oh
like a
no,
couple more minutes. I
I can talk about this for days.
that's good. I'm glad to hear. So, who were some of your favorite fighters? Like, what that inspired you to get into MMA, and that you enjoy watching? Let's start with people that inspired you to get into MMA.
So when I first started watching it, of course, Brock Lesnar was the guy who he was kind of my in. But I think the person I enjoyed watching most was Anderson Silva.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's super exciting, right? So
So slick, man.
it was like watching a video game character
I know.
on TV and doing it in
Right.
real life. So there was him. Then there was Ronda Rousey. I really liked Ronda Rousey when she was coming up. Now I would say that my favorites, looking back, and the guys who I watch a lot, try to model my game off, are both Khabib and GSP, and more recently Colby Covington. So I think the three of
Really?
yeah. I think
What do
the
you
three
what
of
do you like about his style?
Colby's.
Yeah,
I just like his relentlessness. Honestly, like
just the
I think
pressure.
just the pressure. It's very similar to like a Khabib in the sense of like when he gets people down, constantly taking them back down, putting his weight on them, landing shots. I think Khabib's more relentless with the ground and pound and more
Right.
aggressive with the ground and pound. But I think um in strategically they have the same idea. So yeah,
Right.
I think GSP, Khabib, Colby. I think the three of these guys are my
And
favorites.
Colby's gas tank is insane. It really is
Unreal.
insane because like he's not only just wrestling, but he's throwing an insane amount of like striking at you. And yeah,
No,
maybe he's not
seriously.
gonna knock you out, but he's throwing like so many punches every round. It's crazy.
No, it's ridiculous, and that's why it was such a shame watching his last fight. Like, I don't know if you got to watch his fight
I
against
did,
Leon.
yeah.
It was such a shame because I'm like, my God, I know, like I've watched all this guy's fights
Right.
multiple times. I'm like, this is not how he fights. From round one itself, I was like, this is not it.
Did you feel like that was Colby having an off night, or did you feel like it was just a really good anti wrestling match by Leon?
I genuinely think he did what he had to do. He chopped at those legs, defended takedowns when he had to, and he landed some good shots
Right.
and got some takedowns of his own as well. I just think Colby never got going. I
Mm.
think he only started getting going towards what round five, really. I mean,
Right.
even in the third round,
Third round three, he won, right?
that was a kind of closer round. He won the last round. And he even ended up on top,
Right.
landing ground and pound. But in the third round, he takes Leon down, and Leon eventually gets back up. But I'm like, man, you know what? If this was any other fight, I think Colby goes for another one. He only tried that one takedown, but
Right.
if you watch his earlier fights, he wouldn't have just stopped there. He would have probably tried another three or four takedowns,
Right. Right.
eh, you know, to follow up. So that's where I felt he was off color. And then even in the first two rounds, usually comes in with them kind of more how do I say? He just throws more caution to win. So he's throwing those overhands, those kind
Right.
of odd angles with the kicks, and then he's moving forward constantly. In this fight, he was kind of stuck in the mud. Um, just didn't look like his usual self.
He did say afterwards that he got injured, like in the first round or something like that. I don't know how legit that is, but that's what he said. That I got injured, so I couldn't really fight my fight. Which is it is interesting. Like Colby's like style is very like exhausting if you're an opponent. Like if you watch any of his opponents after the fight, they look tired as fuck. They're like, all right, I want to just go and sleep now.
I mean, look at Masvidal. He had to be like held by the security guards after
Yeah,
the fight. No, it is really tough. So like even when I fight, when I kind of put it on and I try to copy that style after my fight, I'm like, my goodness.
right,
But the one tip my coach gave me in terms of when you're fighting and controlling the fight, he said that imagine your gas tank is going from 100 to 70. Your opponent's at maybe 40, 30, and
Right.
it's constantly going down like this. You're here and they're here, and it's just going down like this till
Right.
they're at zero. So you might be getting tired, but your opponent is dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Interesting. And
yeah.
do you watch MMA or because there's some fighters and then some sports people that like are very good at the sport but don't like watching the sport. Do you like watching MMA?
Oh, I love watching MMA.
Okay.
I absolutely love watching MMA. I mean, if I'm not watching fights, I'm watching, podcasts. I'm just watching random interviews, press
What do you
conferences.
listen to in podcasts?
So the main, obviously, Joe Rogan is kind of the go-to guy for everyone. I
Sure.
think he's always bringing in the best fighters. He's a good conversationalist, so
Right.
he's a good guy to watch. But less on the podcast side, more so on the YouTube side. Chael Sonnen, I'll
Yeah.
always recommend him.
I
Michael
like DC. I
Bisping,
like DC too.
yeah,
DC is a good time.
he's fun. He's fun. I like it.
It's weird looking at him because the way he is, the way his attitude, and even his body now that he's retired, he's like a little
Oh my
chubby.
god.
But it's weird if you look at him, you wouldn't think what a killer this guy is, what an absolute freaking murderer this guy is. It's
Oh my
crazy.
god. I mean, at one point he was the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah. Like champ, like just ragdolled people, like ran through everybody other than John Jones essentially, and
Yeah.
Miocic. Yeah. But yeah, I like DC too. And um, what was your so before I let you go, what was your favorite fight card? It doesn't have to be UFC, but what was your favorite fight card of 2023, and which one are you looking forward to most so far? Because a lot of the cards haven't been announced. Which fight or card are you looking forward to most in 2024?
The 2024 question first. They announced Poirier versus Saint Denis.
Right.
I am so excited for that fight.
That's a good
When they
fight.
announced that fight, I was so excited. I'm like, my God, they couldn't have made a better fight.
That is
You know
such a
what?
good
If
fight.
that
Yeah.
was the main event for UFC 300, I would take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Honestly. Just because Poirier, he goes out to kill.
Right.
And for those who've never watched BSD, Benoit Saint Denis, this guy is a ex special forces special forces killer. Like this
Right.
guy will go. He's walking forward. He doesn't care. Like he'll get hit, but he's coming to kill you. Like whether it's with his chokes, whether it's with his hands, he doesn't care. So that's just a match made in heaven.
And like the way he knocked out Frivola, because Frivola is not a scrub. I was
No, he's
expecting
not.
that to be a very competitive fight. He freaking knocks him out with that high kick. I was like,
Oh
holy
man,
shit, this guy is legit. This guy's legit.
my God. And
Yeah.
and he was not getting up for a while.
No, no, that
That
was
was
a.
really nasty. Obviously, we've got Strickland and Duplessis coming
I'm
up.
excited
Which,
about that one now. I wasn't before, but after that press conference, it kind of got me.
you know what? I think people have really slept on Duplessis, including
Mm,
myself. I think that in general, people kind of look down upon African MMA. No one really looks at it
mm,
as a. I mean, of course, you see the three champions from Africa, but they've never trained out of Africa. You look at Duplessis, you're like, man, is he really that good? What's South African MMA? This guy is legit. No one does that to Robert Whitaker.
right.
No one. And then he's come out here. I think that he's being slept on. I think he's gonna win that fight. To be honest,
You think so?
I think he
And he's
wins that
so
fight.
strong, man. He's so strong. He's just built like a house. He's still like square.
I think he did a hip throw or a head and arm throw on Whitaker.
Right.
First of all, head and arm throws rarely work
Right.
in MMA. And then you're doing this to Robert Whitaker. Yoel
Right.
Romero didn't do that to Robert Whitaker.
Right.
So I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, no, these are two fights that are obviously very exciting for me. I
And the,
could
the thing with Duplessis also, sorry, Varun, I cut
no
across
no
you
no of
there, but
course.
the thing with Duplessis also was that initially in his fight, the big drawback about him, or the big criticism was that he keeps getting gassed out. Like
Yeah,
in one round he's done and he's like breathing out of his mouth, and he's like, no, that's how I fight because I can't breathe out of my nose.
I
And for
know.
like 4 or 5 fights, he fought without being able to breathe out of his nose. And then I think in the Whitaker fight, finally, he got like some surgery done. And now he
Yeah,
can
yeah.
finally breathe out of his nose. And I'm like, how the hell did you fight at an elite level, not being able to breathe out of your nose?
What knocking people out,
While
like
knocking people out, exactly.
yeah, not just like fighting. Yeah, that's ridiculous to me. But that just goes to show like the kind of character, like who we're
Yeah,
dealing with. This is not a scrub.
yeah,
This guy's not here by fluke. He's here because he deserves to be there.
right.
So no, I'm very excited for that fight. In fact, I think Pereira's gonna headline UFC 300.
Really,
I just have that feeling he will, because we have Ankalaev and Walker going at it this weekend,
right,
if I'm not wrong.
right.
I think the winner of that will fight him at 300.
Not Jamal Hill. You don't think?
He's still
Is
out,
he?
isn't he?
Oh, is he out for longer? Is he not going to be back in time?
I mean, he tore his Achilles tendon, and so I
And that was
think,
recently. That was not that long ago, right?
yeah, and even if it was, like, I think it takes just what, a good 9 months to just heal,
Oh shit. Okay.
or something like that. I'm no
Right.
doctor, as you can see, but um, yeah, and I think it takes about 9 months to heal, and then
Okay.
doing the rehab, and then getting fight ready. I think it'll take him some time. So I'd be surprised if it was him versus Hill at UFC 300.
Yeah, I would be afraid, not afraid, but I would find that fight to be very interesting. The Hill Pereira fight would be very interesting because I think Hill also hits very hard and he's got decent grappling too. So, with somebody that hits hard and has got good striking, decent grappling, and is about the same size as Pereira, I would like to see how Pereira does against that because his wrestling still isn't really. If Israel Adesanya can take you down and keep you down, then I don't think you have. I don't think you can call yourself a great grappler.
No, I don't think you can either. And you know what? You have to remember, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because Glover, who's really, really good with the grappling,
Yeah.
he had a tough time with the grappling against Hill. He didn't have his way.
No.
Hill was managed to stuff takedowns, and if I'm not wrong, he might have even got his own takedowns.
Right.
I might be completely making that up. He's no joke.
Right.
He's good all over the place. And again, sorry, and now that I mentioned that, that's also a story going in, right? You've got Pereira coming in to
Exactly.
avenge his guru's loss.
Exactly. And I was surprised that they didn't do that storyline in the Prohaska fight. They should have. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
why they
yeah.
didn't do it. I feel like,
Actually, yeah,
if
you're
Chael
right.
Sonnen was fighting, the first thing he would have said was that, hey, I beat the shit out of your coach and now I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, yeah. See, this is why I always tell people you need to watch him, because he'll drop these nuggets, man.
Right.
I'm like, no, but 100%. I hope they kind of dive into that angle a bit more,
Right.
because oh my god, like that's a really fun kind of thing to. It's
And
like
that's what
a
makes
anime
fights, that's
story.
what makes fights because I feel like the average audience, and I consider myself like a very lay
Hmm.
MMA enthusiast, but still, like I was interested in the Duplessis Strickland fight just because I think it's a very interesting stylistic matchup between the two.
Yeah,
But after that press conference, I'm like, oh yeah, put your hands on each other. I want to watch this.
I think most people after that really got interested in the fight. Like, I mean, I was always interested as a fan, but I think now everyone's like, oh, who's gonna win this? We want to
Yeah,
see this
exactly. Because
settle.
now it's personal,
And now it's
and
personal.
now
Yeah,
when it becomes personal, it becomes more fun. You generate interest, and I
exactly.
feel like they need to get like how WWE has like writers and promoters, and they write storylines and they promote storyline. They need to get
Yeah,
like Chael Sonnen and just give him like a storyline. Hey, this is a fight coming up. Write and build a storyline for this fight.
look, I'll tell you one thing, and in addition to that, and Chelsea, and if you ever hear this, okay, I think you need more Paul Heymans.
Yeah, right.
Genuinely, I like
Mm,
Chelsea, and if you're hearing this, I be my Paul Heyman. I'd be more than grateful,
right.
because yeah, no, I just think people would benefit from it. Look, if you're a good fighter,
Imagine if Pereira had a Paul Heyman.
oh
Imagine how
my
fun that
god,
would be. Yeah.
that would be incredible. That would be
Right.
so fun, because
Yeah.
he doesn't talk. He's just that like Brock Lesnar-esque kind of guy, like
Right.
just
Just
tough.
stands there, stares at you, and Paul Heyman scares the shit out of you while he's staring at you. It's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, no, I really wish that this kind of becomes more common. But yeah, no, so in terms of the promotion side, again, going back to Chill, he does say if you can't hype up a fight to your local gas station cashier,
Right.
right, then no one's going to watch it.
Yep.
So what he meant by that is no one's really interested in, you know, oh, what's on the line? It's rank number 5 versus rank number 6. No one really cares about that. I mean, people care about a championship fight, or they'll care if there's a grudge or there's something personal, like you said. So, for example, in the case of Ian Gary, right? That
Oh
was the
my
context in
god,
which he
that
was talking
poor
about.
guy. Yeah,
If Ian Gary goes and says, "Oh, I want to fight Colby Covington because
right,
he's ranked number 4 and I want to win the title," no one cares about that. That's kind of like that's lame. And your
right.
local gas cashier is not going to care about that. But if you say, "Okay, I'm going to fight this guy because he made fun of my wife,"
Right.
now that's something he can get behind. That's something he understands. Now he's like, "Oh shit, you should kick his ass."
Yeah.
I want to watch that. I want to watch you kick the guy's ass.
Right.
That's how you sell fights. So that's why now I think the Sean Strickland and Duplessis fight is interesting.
Yeah, I think we need more WWE in MMA for sure. It helps the overall product. It helps the overall product massively. I enjoy watching it. I used to watch MMA on and off during the GSP era, and I used to watch.
Hmm.
I used to love Chuck Liddell.
Of course.
And Randy Couture. I used to watch it on and off, but I really started getting into it during the Conor McGregor era. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
filthy casual. I
Oh,
got
fair
into it
enough.
really around the Conor McGregor era when he was like having that feud with Jose Aldo. That's when I really started getting into it, and with the Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm, that whole thing, and Amanda Nunez. That's when I started really getting into it. So, those storylines is what attracts filthy casuals like me.
No, but you're not alone, right? I mean,
Right.
look at where the sport went after Conor McGregor and the whole Jose Aldo fight. Obviously the result was incredible, and the fashion in which he won was incredible. But what really brought the eyeballs was him, saying that he'll walk into his favela and do this and
On
that
horseback.
on horseback, and just I don't know, the Irish support and
Right.
rallying the troops and everything.
I
I
would
think,
love it if if we had a contingent of Indian fans like following popular Indian fighters from place to place the way the Irish do. Like, it must feel so great to be an
oh
Irish
my
fighter,
God.
knowing that like 500 people are going to show up no matter where you fight.
And no matter where you are on the card,
Right.
I think well, people have to remember Conor McGregor has not won a championship fight. He's only won, I think, against Cowboy,
Right.
right? But he's not won a fight other than that since 2016. But he's
Wow.
going to come back sometime this year, right? And he will be top of the bill
Yep.
and get paid the most money, uh, you know, out of any fighter in the UFC.
Right.
And that's just because of his support and the kind of fan base that he has.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think it's feasible for Indians. I think that in cricket we've seen diehard support.
Right.
That guy who's waving the flag at the
Yep.
Sachin Tendulkar guy, the
And
Dhoni guy.
Indians like following figures. We like
Yeah.
celebrities. Indians are celebrity obsessed a little bit. So if you can find fighters that are popular, that are winning fights, that have a little personality about them, I'm not, it wouldn't surprise me if they are able to develop a, significant following.
Look, I'll tell you this. I've fought in Delhi twice. So the first time I fought in Delhi, I was the only person from Delhi on the card, right?
Wow.
And I remember, like, I've never got that sort of reception anywhere. Like, I didn't know anyone in the crowd, but
Really?
just because I was from Delhi, the crowd was like, "Yeah, Varun, Varun." I was like, "Dude, I don't know any of you. Like, why? What's going on?"
Right.
And then after that, right? So for those watching, I mean, I'm sure many people know. My dad is a fairly well-known guy. For the first time in my life, when I exited the cage, I saw people swerve him and come to
Go
me
to
to
you.
come to me to take photos.
Right.
And I'm like, what is happening?
Right.
So I really do think that you know that sort of craze can be generated in India. It's just a matter of, again, bringing the eyeballs and bringing the awareness of what the sport is. And I
Mhm.
think winning fights in India is one thing, but winning internationally, and the reason I say that is because I think that typically, and let's be real, Western media is what most people in the world are exposed to,
Right.
right? Traditionally in Western media, Indians are portrayed as clowns. I
Right.
mean, like, for lack
Like
of a better word,
weak and, kind of effeminate and stuff like that.
yeah, feeble. I
Yeah.
mean, The only exception is the recent Spider-Man, but other than that, we're really shown as losers, right?
Right.
And I think that it's about time. We have people like myself, again, Anshul, your Santoshes of the world. We step up and we show the world that we're not just your apus, we're not just your you know gas station workers. No, we're here and we'll kick your
Right.
ass. I
Yeah.
think that it's important that Indians know that now.
Yeah, and the people don't know that the fighting tradition in India runs so deep, so old. This is a civilization that has been fighting for 1,000 years. You
Exactly.
don't survive by being
No,
feeble and weak. You
no,
survive by learning to fight and continuing to fight and being good at fighting.
exactly. And you know what? I think that over time people will realize this because it's something that strikes close to home for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure, especially for those like I grew up overseas, right? I grew up in Singapore for the most of my life, and in London, and I know that no one ever took it seriously when I first said I'm gonna go into fighting, because they're like, nah, nah, come on, like this is just your hobby, this is just your
Right.
hobby, what do you actually do? I'm like, no, 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 this is what I do, like I fight. Because no one can comprehend that you know there are Indians out there actually fighting on a global stage. Because I remember getting into an argument. Someone was like, "No, no, no. How are you gonna fight against these black guys? They're strong. How are you gonna fight against the Europeans? They're big and strong." I'm
Right.
like, man, you've just put yourself in this box,
Right.
right? If you have this defeatist mentality from the get go, then of course they're gonna win every single time.
Yeah.
As soon as you take yourself out of that box and you realize that everyone's just flesh and bone and we can fight, and
Right.
we have that within us.
And I also think that Indians have been conditioned to think that way by
Yeah.
whether it's Western media or by their own media or by their own
Hmm.
commentators that, oh, you're not capable of this. This is what you should be doing. This is what you're good for. You're not good for fighting. You're not good for war. You're not good for these things. Leave that to the Arabs. Leave that to the Europeans. Leave that to other people. You're not good for that stuff. And I think people need to see Indian fighters. Like, I think when people see Indian boxers doing well on the global stage, they're like, oh, we can fight. When they see
Yeah.
Indian wrestlers win medals in the Commonwealth Games, they're like, oh, we can beat the Europeans. We can beat the
Exactly.
Europeans pretty well. And similarly, when you see like an MMA fighter knock out a European fighter, they'll be like, oh, we can knock people out. Okay, that works. We can do this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. No, and it's just about representation globally,
right.
to show that it's not like, yeah, me beating another Indian is one thing, but me going up and beating a guy from another country is another. For example, one of my biggest sporting inspirations and just inspirations life is Virat Kohli, right?
Mm.
I think and he's kind of done that in cricket, right? He's shown the world that who cares, man? Whether you're Australia, South Africa, I'm gonna go into your homeland and I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna score 100. I'm gonna flip off your crowd,
Right,
because I'm like, this defeatist mentality is just not gonna cut it.
right.
It's about time we take ourselves out of that box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish you nothing but the best. I'm glad we were
Thank
able to
you.
talk. I'm glad we were able to connect because I admire you for just what you do. Because it takes balls to just do what you do, and it's a whole separate ball game to be good at it like you are. So
Thank you.
cheers to you, man. Cheers to Anshul. Cheers to all the trailblazers who are creating the pathway for MMA to grow in India. Hopefully, the summit is a success. I'd love to talk about it sometime again if when we're close to the day, um, and hopefully you'll have a script prepared for that at that time.
We don't mention that. That was the blooper section.
um, so yeah, we'll talk about that, and maybe if you're up to it, maybe after one of the big UFC cards, we can have a get together. Well, I'll get Kushal over as well, and we can maybe break down one of those big cards sometime.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. That would
Yeah.
absolutely be fun. And thank you so much for all the compliments. You really gassed me up this.
Yeah, man, of course.
I
You
appreciate
deserve
it.
it,
I
man.
really appreciate it.
I'm a big fan of martial arts, and when I I love encouraging people to do it because I think it's very
Thank you.
important to learn some kind of a martial arts for anybody, even if you're not a professional fighter. I think everybody should learn some kind of a martial art because a lot of people, including myself, when I grew up as a very fearful kid, but I think
Yeah.
learning martial arts, learning how to fight, um, gives you a level of confidence that I think ordinarily you probably wouldn't get. And
No,
so,
not at all.
removing that fear from you, I think is important for everybody, man, woman, child, I don't care who it is.
Yeah, and it translates to different aspects of your life for sure. Whether
Yeah.
it's your day-to-day life in interactions, work, you know,
Yeah.
I think it has a lot of applications.
Yeah, definitely. Well, all right then, guys. Varun Sanyal, where can the audience that are listening to this, watching this, where can they go and follow you?
So you can find me on Twitter at Varun Sanyal and on Instagram at Varun Sanyal. So these are probably where you're going to find me the most. I will soon be more active on YouTube. I plan to get a YouTube up and running where you can
Nice.
find more content in relation to me, my fights, and just following my journey. So watch out for that. But yeah, in the meantime, Instagram, Twitter, give me a follow.
All right, will do. And please, guys, if you enjoy this, please go follow Varun. If you enjoy this, like, share, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Why don't stick around with me just for a second while the recording finishes? Uh,
Not a
but
problem.
um, guys, please, if you are interested in this art form, and I do consider it an art form, please go, look up local shows around you if you're in Delhi, if you're in Pune, like Varun said, look up the shows around you. If you're interested, please look up the fighters around you and please go support them. Please go support Varun if he's fighting in Delhi. Try to go check out his fights, try to show the fighters some support, because this is a sport that is growing globally, and this provides an avenue for many of our top level athletes to not just have to settle for a government job and actually you know attain a much better, happier, financially successful life for themselves and their families as well. So please do that.